I won't do my standard watch joke. It is 8:30 in the morning. My name is Sheldon Smith. I'm the educational director for the CC&GTCC. I'll probably never in 100 years get that out all at the same time. We are really delighted this morning to have a guest speaker, Dr. David Schwartz, who is, as you can see from what's on the screen, with the Center for Gaming Research at UNLV. David spoke to the convention 5 years ago, I guess, something like that. And his knowledge and depth of Las Vegas history is second to none. And he's going to entertain you this morning in an intellectual way and an educational way. And if you are all aware, of course, that this is a IRS 501c3 educational organization, that's why we run educational seminars. Probably that's the secondary reason. The primary reason is, as you probably have read in the magazine from the items that I've written, in order to really understand your hobby, you need to know all there is to know about how and why we have a hobby like this. And part of it is people like David doing research to let us know how these things came into existence, why they go out of existence, and the people. And I won't steal any of David's thunder, but he'll tell you about his fourth book that he's working on, which is just an absolutely fascinating subject. The one thing that David and I did agree on is David's going to go straight through his presentation and then we'll entertain questions. We don't want to entertain any questions while he's making a presentation. So thank you very much, David Schwartz. You're on.
Thank you, Sheldon, because if there's one thing people come to Vegas for, it is to be educated at 8:30 in the morning on a Thursday. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to run through 4 sections really quick. First, I'll tell you a little bit about me and what I do and how I do it and why I do it, and then a little bit about UNLV Special Collections and the UNLV Library. Then I'm going to talk about the Center for Gaming Research, which is my area of responsibility. And then finally, I'll focus on the gaming collection, and I'll close up with a couple of ideas for collectors. Okay, so who am I? I was born in Atlantic City, New Jersey, so if any of you have been, that's where I'm from. If any of you had the good fortune to play at the Trump Taj Mahal in the 90s, I might have been there as a security officer, helping you in some way, hopefully not escorting you out of the property for doing bad things. I later worked in surveillance there, so got a different view of casino operations. And in addition to that, I have a pretty extensive academic background. I got my bachelor's and master's degrees in, well, my bachelor's was a double major in American history and anthropology. My master's degree was in just American history. And then I got a PhD in US history at UCLA. And the first 2 were at Penn in Philly. So the question people give me is, why do you study gambling? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, growing up in Atlantic City, I was surrounded by the gambling industry as it grew there. And naturally, that raised a lot of questions. Probably the biggest one that I have is, why do casinos look the way they do? You know, and this is a question that I had even when I was a little kid. You know, why do they have to build these big hotels and build all this other stuff to have gambling? Why don't they just have gambling, you know, in a small casino detached from everything? And I'll get to the answers to that in a little bit. Another reason that I think informed my desire to study gambling was my work history, and the fact that I grew up around the industry, that I worked in the industry, really made me look askance at a lot of the things I read about gambling. A lot of stuff you'll read about gambling that's older talks about the industry basically as a vice and as being full of deviance. And there is something inherently wrong with the business of gambling. And I really couldn't square this with what I knew, you know, being from Atlantic City, that, hey, 99% of the people in this industry are honest, decent people. You know, at least 95% of the people who come to the casino are honest and decent people. You notice a little difference there. We've got to be, we've got to be realistic. And I don't think it's fair to characterize them all as pursuing a vice or being deviant, and it's time that somebody studied the history of gambling as an activity that people just like to do for recreation and not because they are criminally insane. which is honestly what many of the other pieces of scholarship would have you believe. So I thought there were some gaps there. People hadn't written about it. If anyone has gone into a graduate program, you'll know that one of the things you do is you write a dissertation, which is essentially a book. Mine was 460 pages, and I wouldn't inflict it on anyone. You know, if I could go back in time and say, no, don't anybody read it, I would. But basically what it is, it's a way of you proving I can do original historical scholarship and I can fill a gap in the field of history. And the idea is that we're building a big skyscraper of history and everybody's going to contribute at least one brick, and your dissertation is like your first brick that you contribute to show that you're building history. So I decided to write my dissertation about the development of casinos, starting with the question that I had as a kid: why do casinos look the way they do? You know, why are they integrated with the hotels and the restaurant and the convention centers and everything we see around us? And as I did my research, I decided to focus it on the place where I thought the modern casino developed, which was the Las Vegas Strip from 1945 to 1978. And the answer I eventually came up with after doing lots of research, partially at special collections, and that's kind of one of the interesting things I'll tell you about, was that it's because of the nature of the business itself. Casinos run pretty low margin, negative expectation games, right? And we all know this, that in the short run, there's a lot of volatility. So if you're a big bettor at baccarat or blackjack, in the short run, you can hurt the casino. The casino can hurt you, but you can hurt them. But in the long run, if you're betting small amounts consistently, it's going to end up on the casino side eventually. The casinos know this, so they add all this stuff to keep us near the casino. Of course, we all know this now. But in the field of history, nobody really knew this. And one of the things I noticed was that they didn't really differentiate between what kind of gambling businesses there were. They would talk about casinos in the Wild West and then talk about the Bellagio being a casino and not make any difference, you know, not really show there was any kind of evolution. And so what I did was I said, wait, you know, yes, at one time you did have these standalone gambling halls, but that was a time when gambling was mostly crooked. When the object of gambling was to get the sucker in, basically it was, hello stranger, goodbye sucker. You know, get the sucker in, clean them out, send them on their way. And in that case, you don't want to have them going to see Celine Dion or Bette Midler and hanging around the place and saying, wow, everyone else is losing too. You want to get them in and get them out. So the reason why the casinos are so big and have all this stuff essentially is because they're honest. And they have honest games and they don't cheat you, which I found pretty interesting. And it's got all kinds of implications, I think. All right, so I did that dissertation. And naturally from there, from getting a PhD in history, I went back to the casino industry and got a job doing surveillance for about a year. And from there, after a while, I started to get a little bit restless because if anyone's been in a surveillance room, you know, it's pretty boring stuff. It's not as exciting as you would see on TV. You know, it's not Jimmy Kahn beating people up and crushing their heads or stuff. It's really a bunch of guys sitting around in the dark, watching people on little TVs, doing repetitive motions and gambling with no sound, which is not as exciting as it seems, you know. The no sound thing really kills it. So after a while of that, I got bored, and I went out to a gambling conference here in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, and in what I thought was going to be my final act as an academic, I dropped off a copy of my doctoral dissertation at UNLV Special Collections where I'd done my research and said, well, okay, at least no matter what happens in my career, I wrote my dissertation and they've got it here. And when I did that, I found out that there was an opening for the position that would become the director of the Center for Gaming Research. And I said, well, you know what, I might as well apply, and I really don't want to move to Vegas, but I'll apply anyway, because why not? And plus, I'll never get the job because I have no experience working in an academic library, and why would they hire me? As I found out later, I was the top-ranked candidate. If I'd known this, I would have been a little bit more stringent in my salary demands, but such is life in the big city. You don't want to hire me to negotiate for you. Basically, I'll share this with you. The salary negotiation went like this. The dean called me up and said, we'd like to offer you the job, the pay is this. And I said, well, you think I could hold out for any more money? And there was this pause at the other end. And the dean was a very distinguished guy, white hair, white beard, very distinguished guy. There's pause. And then just came back the response, no, I don't think so. So then I said, okay, I'll take it then. You know, didn't know, like, you wait and then say, I'll think about it, then they'll call you back with a higher offer and leverage. All right, fine, I'll take it. So I took it. Really like my job. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, about the mechanics of my job a little bit more. What I will tell you now is in addition to doing that, in addition to running the center, I also teach. I teach classes on gambling history, Nevada history, regular US history, social and economic issues about gambling. And right now I'm teaching a class that has nothing to do with gambling. It's just about writing and helping students write nonfiction. Okay, which segues into the books that I've written. I've written 3 books that have been published, 1 more that I'm working on now. The first was an adaptation of my dissertation. It's about half the length and hopefully 10 times as good as the dissertation was. Then I wrote a book called Cutting the Wire that's about the Wire Act and laws against gambling and the evolution of that and its applicability in the internet age, which lawyers really seem to like. It's interesting, everybody has a different favorite book. The people who like Vegas like the first book, lawyers always tell me they like the second book, and the last book, Roll the Bones, A History of Gambling, is a general history of gambling from the beginning of time all the way through today. That's probably the one I would urge you to go out and get. It's also on Amazon, I think for about like $8. It's a 500-page book, so it's a really good deal. So I'd urge you to get that one if you want to get anything that I've written, because it really places all of gambling history in a context, and I show how gambling developed with humanity and how gambling has developed with society. And it was a lot of fun to write. Okay, and right now, as Sheldon alluded to, I'm writing the biography of Jay Sarno, who opened Caesar's Palace and Circus Circus and was a fascinating guy. And I think is a really fascinating symbol of Las Vegas, but also America and aspirations and triumph and also tragedy. Okay, here's some pictures of my books. All right, so now that hopefully you know who I am and you know where I'm coming from, I'm going to tell you a little bit about UNLV Special Collections. This is not what it looks like. This is one of the paintings that we have that shows people kind of lounging around with a fox. All right. UNLV Special Collections is pretty old. As you may or may not know, UNLV itself is about 50 years old. There's a lot of disagreement about how old UNLV actually is, because by one criteria, you can say when was the first class held down here. You could also say when was the first building built, and you can also say when did it become UNLV and not Nevada Southern University. Special Collections, we know when it was founded. It was founded in June of 1967, so right before the Summer of Love and all the turmoil. They decided we are going to found Special Collections at UNLV Libraries, which back then was Dickinson Library, in Nevada Southern University, in the library of Nevada Southern University, which became UNLV. And it was the first central place in Southern Nevada, the first place that collected any kind of material about the history and culture of the region. So before this, people would have to send it up north if they took it up north. And anyone here from Nevada? Okay, so one guy there knows that we have a slightly antagonistic relationship, and I may be understating things, between the North and the South. So you could see how people in Las Vegas wouldn't necessarily want to send their family papers, their personal stuff up north, so there really wasn't a lot of collecting. So June 1967, they start this repository, and they soon realize, well, hey, one thing we have in Las Vegas that in 1967 we didn't really have many other places is gambling. Reno, UNR does not collect a lot of gambling stuff, so UNLV said, we're going to collect gambling stuff. Okay. Here's a partial list of some of the recent books that have been researched at UNLV Special Collections. A book called Las Vegas as It Began as It Grew by Stanley Payer, that some of you might know. Gene Mooring's Resort City in the Sun Belt. Alan Hess's Viva Las Vegas After Hours Architecture. If you want one book about Vegas casinos and how they physically look, which I think is an interesting book thing, I would get that book. Neon Metropolis by Hal Rothman, who probably is a preeminent, or was the preeminent historian of Las Vegas and the West and the environment. Joan Whiteley's Young Las Vegas, The Best City of Them All, and finally Green and Mooring's Las Vegas and Centennial History, as well as all the books that I've written too, and several, and literally dozens more. We have people coming in there from around the world to do research. Okay, now what do we have in all of the Special Collections? This is what we have. First of all, and the most interesting, are the manuscript collections. Now, you might wonder what a manuscript collection is. These are rare and unique documents that no place else has. They're usually personal papers, so someone's correspondence, someone's diary, or in the area that I've developed a lot, corporate papers. So we have the Harrah's collection, we have the Harrah's archives, we have the MGM Mirage archives, we have the Stardust archives, we have archives. Pretty much the way I get stuff now is when they blow up a casino, if they are historically conscious, they will call me. The Stardust was historically conscious, the Frontier was not. So we don't have very much from the Frontier, partially because they didn't really have much when they blew it up, but the Stardust, they had a lot of stuff, and we have pretty much the entire files, the entire set of files of their PR department. So if you're curious about what kind of slot promotion they were running back in June of 1996, we've probably got the answer because it's there. So that's one thing. That's really the centerpiece of the collections. Another area that we have is photographs. We've got about 70,000 photographs. Many of them are of Las Vegas. Some of them, a smaller amount, a group of them, is of casinos and gambling. We've also got the university archive, so if for some reason you're interested in UNLV history, you've got that. We've got oral history collections, which I think oral histories are one of the more interesting things, especially if you're a collector and you're interested in what was going on at the time and you want to hear actually in their own voice some of the pioneers. You can listen to these. You know, for example, we have the tapes of Benny Binion doing his interview in 1973. So if you've got any Binion's horseshoe chips and you want to have some kind of personal connection, it's an incredible thing. You can hear this guy actually talking and you can get a feel. Even if you just read the transcript, which I put some of it on the web, you can get a feel for how he talks, and I think you have a better understanding of him. So oral histories are pretty big too. That's another really big area. Other one is newspapers, which are very helpful. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of indexes, so you can do a lot of searching through the newspapers, but you find some really rich stuff. You know, and every time I go back and do, you know, for my own research, where I go back and do newspaper research, for every one thing that I'm looking for, I always learn 5 or 10 other things, just about different casinos and different properties and what's going on. We also have a lot of maps, architectural drawings of some casinos, and finally books. We have a lot of books. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the gambling book specifically. So here's what you really need to know about Special Collections. It's located in Lead Library on the UNLV campus, and everybody now wants me to give them the street address to put it in the MapQuest, and I tell them, because it's on the university campus, we do not have a street address. We have a mailing address, which is 4505 Maryland Parkway, but we're not on Maryland Parkway. We're on Harmon Avenue on the Swenson Avenue side. So people always get hung up on that. They go to Maryland Parkway, then they wander around the campus and it's hot, and they finally show up 45 minutes later and they're hot and frustrated, and I say, you should have listened to me. I told you to go down the Swenson Avenue side of Harmon. Harmon dead ends, the library is the big building on your right. And I know it's funny, we're in the 21st century, and I'm giving people directions like I'm out in, you know, 19th century backwoods, Ohio, Pennsylvania, you know, go down past the barn and like, okay, go down past the Hard Rock and keep on going down past the tennis courts, and there's a big building on the right, and that's it right there. Okay, but that's where it is. The hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 5, Tuesday and Thursday, 9 to 9. We do not have weekend hours, okay, which is unfortunate, but it's a consequence of staffing and whatnot. And plus, it's also good. You don't want to spend your weekends in Las Vegas in an archive doing research. You want to get out there and have some fun. Okay, so that's Special Collections. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Center for Gaming Research, which is my little corner of Special Collections. This was founded in 1988 as the Gaming Resource Center, and we've had a couple of different names. In 2001, I changed the name to the Gaming Studies Research Center, and then later changed it again to the Center for Gaming Research. And I'll tell you, the ultimate goal is to attract a big name donor who wants to put their name in this, and then it will become the Big Donor Center, and then in smaller letters, for Gaming History and Research. That's the ultimate goal. So that's where I would see it going, and then we could do lots of really neat stuff and help all you guys out and have lots of cool stuff for you. Our mission is to support academic inquiry into all aspects of gambling, particularly the historical and cultural stuff. So things like, we wouldn't fund somebody to do a survey of problem gambling because other organizations do that kind of stuff, but we would help somebody learn about, if they want to investigate the history of craps, we have materials and stuff like that. So that's the sort of stuff we do. And it's really ideal for collectors because you can literally come in and browse all kinds of stuff. So what does the Center for Gaming Research do? What do I do as its director? Number one, we work to expand the gaming collection, and I'm always looking for things to buy. I'm on a lot of mailing lists for rare book collectors. I'm always combing through them for books that I don't have. I've got almost a standing order with Howard down at the Gambler's Book store, who is no relation, but still a friend, so I'm always buying stuff from Howard. Pretty much if something comes out about gambling, we've probably bought it, and if we don't have it, let me know and I will get it if it can be gotten. Probably the only, and also in related areas, probably the only book I haven't been able to get that I wanted to get was a book about cold reading, and I forget the name of the author, but he refused to sell it to the library because he wanted everybody to buy it and pay for it, which I thought was kind of weird. So we do the books. We also work to facilitate research, and this means a lot of things. Half the time, it means that some professor somewhere calls me up and said, I want to know about this. And I usually tell them, well, have you checked the catalog? And no, well, here's the catalog, this is how you check it. Oftentimes, they'll have more complicated questions that I'll have to search for the answers. We also have started a program to give people fellowships to come to use a collection to study. I've got a guy who's working now who's actually giving a talk on Friday, June 27th, if anyone's in town, about the development of the role of sex in the promotion of Las Vegas in the post-war period, which should be interesting. It's got sex in the title, so I think we'll get some people. So we have people doing stuff like that. Now, our third area is that we are a resource for the industry and the media. So people will call me with questions, and sometimes they are factual questions like, what was the gaming revenue in 2007? Other times, for me personally, they're opinion questions. What do you think about the stock price of whatever? And even though I really don't like talking about stock prices and all that kind of stuff, I'll talk about it. And the last thing we do, and this is something that you can enjoy from the comfort of your very own home, is we maintain a website, gaming.unlv.edu, where we have lots of resources that I'm going to talk about. So here's what we have on the website. There's 5 basic areas. I'm sort of melding together 2 of the areas, so there will eventually be 4 basic areas. They're the gaming abstract, the subject guides, the reading room, the virtual museum, and the gaming collection. So the gaming abstract is an area that's really growing. And I got this idea after getting a lot of questions from people. What is can you tell me what this number is? Can you tell me what that number is? And what I would have to do is go to the back, get out a book, look up the book, call them back. Instead I said, wait a second, we can be smart about this. What if I just put all this information online? So I'm doing that. We're putting a lot of that online. Now I just have to, when people call me, I'll just tell them to go look at the website and direct them to the right page. So there's a lot of information. I also have corporate histories, so histories of the different companies with as complete information I could get about property openings and closings, and the stock information that people like so much. And there's some analysis. I never really went too far in mathematics, but I can do basic algebra, so we've got some things like win per machine per day, and other sort of analytical things that people like. Okay, the reading room is an area that's really in flux, and right now I've got some online articles that are sort of proprietary to the site. We're the only place to have them. Also links to other places. We're really upgrading this, and we're combining it with the subject guides. And the subject guides are short summaries of research in specific topics. So for example, we've got one up about slot machines, I've got one up about casino math, and we've got summaries of different jurisdictions. What I want to do with the reading room is we're going to expand it using blogging software and really increase the scope of it. And once we're ready, keep checking back, and once you see something saying we want new contributions, if you have a really good article about the history of a certain property or the history of a jurisdiction or something, we would be happy to have it there and have it be online. Okay. The last thing that's kind of cool is the virtual museum. And this gets a lot of hits. We don't have a lot of display space. We are not a museum. A lot of people think we are a museum. We're not a museum, but we have some neat stuff, and we have a lot of neat collections. And instead of having it only be available to people who come in and thumb through it, I figured why not put a lot of it online? So I've posted a lot of galleries that highlight some of the things we have. One of them is that I've done in conjunction with the American Gaming Association is the Gaming Hall of Fame. The American Gaming Association didn't really have much of a web presence for the Gaming Hall of Fame, and there is no physical Gaming Hall of Fame. So what I did was working with them, I put a lot of that online, and I'm working on that now. Another cool exhibit I did with the AGA was 50 Years of Dining on the Las Vegas Strip, where I ran through the evolution of restaurants, which is kind of fun, because, you know, it's not all about the casinos. Also talked, another exhibit I did back in 2005 was a centennial celebration of gaming in Las Vegas. Before that, we did the neon survey, where we had a student go out and take pictures of neon signs back in 2002. And everybody thought we were nuts. Well, why are you taking pictures of the signs? They're also well maintained. Well, let's think about the signs that we've lost since 2002. Stardust and Frontier are probably the two best examples. So we've got pictures of the signs with survey information, so at least it's preserved there. Also have a really neat exhibit in the El Rancho Vegas, which was the first casino to open on the Strip. And finally, we have an exhibit about the Xanadu Casino Hotel, a hotel that was planned in 1975 and never built. And this developed out of the Martin Stern papers. And it's an interesting look inside of a casino and how they planned casinos back in the 70s. Okay. As you can see, I've got a lot of stuff on this slide, so I'm going to take a drink. So you might wonder what's in the gaming collection. What do I have that I'm so happy about and I'm so proud of? We've got a lot of things. We've got biographies of different people in the industry and different gamblers. We've got the corporate archives. I already talked about that. Harrah's is probably the backbone. We're developing some other holdings too. An area that I'm trying to expand is I'm trying to get more personal papers from people involved in the industry at a lot of different levels. So on one hand, I could be getting papers from casino executives who've traveled around. On the other, from scholars who study gambling. And the other, people who are just interested in gambling. I got a really neat collection from a guy who was a poker player in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and ran this Poker Players Alliance, and had all these back copies of his newsletter, and then gave it all to us. So we have a really good snapshot of what that was like, and his analysis of his poker play. So if you know any gamblers who have papers, or if you have any papers that you think, hey, this is significant, people might learn something from this, I would be happy to talk to you about acquiring it. You've also got the financial reports, lots of fiction about Las Vegas and casinos and gambling, which is fun. Government documents, which can be boring, but are nevertheless essential. The manuscript collections I talked about. The oral histories. We've also got an interesting area called pamphlet files that are basically our miscellaneous files. So if something comes in, let's say we just get a pamphlet for a casino somewhere and we don't have another file for it, we'll just put it into the pamphlet files. We've got a periodicals file that has about 1,500 index entries about different topics, different casinos. We've got a tremendous catalog of periodicals. I can't tell you we have every issue of every gaming magazine ever printed, but we're pretty close, and that's what we're striving for. So a lot of magazines that have gone out of print, we have full runs. Magazines that are currently publishing, we have full runs or near full runs. And this is really one of the most interesting things you can do if you're interested in casino history. Just go through the back issues of the magazines and you kind of learn a lot about where the industry has come from. Photographs. Another interesting area is poetry. You wouldn't think of it, but we actually have gambling poetry. Who knew? And finally, the publicity and PR materials that are basically taken from the casinos, and this just shows how they promote themselves. So there's lots of cool stuff. Now, what about the books? The books is the thing that I'm probably proudest of. We've got over 20,000 books dealing with gambling in the collection. The oldest book, and there may be an older one on the shelf somewhere, but this is the oldest one I've been able to find in the catalog, is called Capitolo del Gioco della Primera, which is about a game called Primero, which is pretty old, as you can see, dated from 1534. So our first book is almost 500 years old. So we've got some pretty old stuff. We get new books almost every month. Like I told you, Howard. I buy a lot of books from Howard, and they're on several topics. First of all is gambling, how to do gambling, gambling guides. We have a lot of those. And it's amazing the advice that people give to gamblers hasn't changed that much, and people have not started winning more. Gambling history, obviously. Gambling history is a big one. Playing cards. We've got a lot of books about playing cards. Famous personalities in gambling. We've got a lot of books about individual games. And finally, we've got areas, related areas like organized crime and prostitution and illegal gambling and that kind of thing. We try to cover that too. Okay. So what do we have that would be of collector's interest? Well, we have several reference works that you're probably all familiar with, and if you're a serious enough collector, I'm sure you probably own yourself. But we've got them just in case. If you're in Vegas, you don't have your copy and you want to look something up, hey, we've got it. And if we don't have it, like I said, let me know and I will get a copy if a copy can be gotten. We also have a collection called the Harvey's Collection. How many people have heard of Harvey Fuller? Okay, a couple of you have. So we have, Harvey Fuller did a survey of Nevada casinos back in the 80s, in that time period. We've got his notes and we've got pictures of chips, which I found pretty valuable going back and looking at how casinos promoted themselves in the 80s. It's pretty good stuff. And that's probably one of the more underutilized parts of the collection that I think people could use more, and I really encourage you to use it. Okay, let me just say kind of in conclusion, the Center for Gaming Research and UNLV Special Collections are open to the public. UNLV is a public institution in Nevada, and one of the things we're committed to is being open to the general public. You do not need a university ID to get in. You don't need a library card. Parking is a little bit of a hassle, but before you come to me and want me to get you free parking, I have to pay for parking. So parking's a hassle for me. Parking's a hassle for everybody on campus. It's about $2 a day if you want to get the daily parking pass, or you can run down and put quarters in the meters, whichever you choose. But if you just figure, well, $2 a day, that's, the cost of one blackjack bet down at the Sahara. So that's not such a bad deal for a day of browsing through history. So if you look at it from that angle, it's actually not that bad. Or if you really want, you could park at the Hard Rock and walk the half mile or so. But I wouldn't do that when it's too hot. So yeah, we are open to the public, and it's really good to have people come in and use it. So for more information, I've got two websites for you. The first one is the website I referenced, gaming.unlv.edu. The second is my personal website where I have a blog and I talk about some issues that are going on, and that is dieiscast.com, DIEISCAST.com, starting with www. So I would like to entertain any questions you have. Yes, there's one in the back. If you could come up, that would be great. Yeah.
Am I correct, you're a recipient of our magazine, the Chip and Token News?
Oh, yes.
Do you, have you ever, or are you planning on extracting some of the great articles that have been written about gaming and its history, or, I mean, are they worthy of extraction for your
oh, definitely.
You mentioned your manuscripts.
Yeah, I would think that the only, well, for the manuscripts or for putting online?
I'm sorry, putting online.
Yes, the only thing that would concern me would be any kind of copyright concerns, but if I could get a waiver from the publishers, I'd be happy to. because that's, that is...
Well, we're the publishers.
Well, that would be great then.
Okay.
Then it'll be pretty easy. Yeah, that's one of the things I'd really like to do, because people have, there's so much good information in there, and it would be a pretty easy thing for me to do, to just scan it in as a PDF and then just have a link and then boom, put that up there. And yeah, I'd like to do that, because I think the more information we get out there about the history, the better it is for everybody. So yeah, that's definitely something. But as I said, I'm working with the IT people to overhaul the reading room, and I really want to make that something good.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Other questions? I know you've got questions. Awesome.
Two questions.
Sure.
One, are the books in your collection, can they be checked out, or do you have to look at them there?
Excellent question. No, they do not circulate. They can't be checked out, which is good, because that means that no matter what, you're going to find the book there. You can look at it in the reading room. There's a photocopier. You can't photocopy a whole book because of copyright, but you can photocopy some stuff for your own personal use. But yeah, and it's pretty, actually, well, ask your follow-up question, then ask me about what special collections is like, and I'll tell you, having been in a few around the world myself. Yeah.
Just one follow-up on a separate subject. If we are cleaning out our closet and have older gaming-related books, would you like us to email you to see if you're interested in any of them, or what would you like?
Yeah, the best thing possibly to do, there's several, if you've got, let's say somebody's cleaning out their closet. If it's heading towards a dumpster, there's a couple things you can do. Number one is, in the worst case scenario, just mail me the books in a carton and I'll go through them and have something done. Best case scenario is you send me a list, a detailed list with the name, title, publication date, and then we can check it against our holdings and tell you, yeah, mail this to us, don't, you can keep this. So that's pretty much what it is. But if somebody, I understand some people don't want to go through their entire collection, in which case I'm happy to just take it and we'll go through it. Just be aware that if we have duplicates, the other books will probably be sent to another library or something. We won't hold on to them. Yeah. But some good will come of them. Okay, and now let me tell you a little bit about special collections as opposed to other special collections. I've done research all over, and I've got to say that UNLV Special Collections is one of the more laid back and has probably much more liberal rules than most special collections I've been in. Many of them, for example, to do research at the Library of Congress Special Collections Room, you need to actually register and apply for and receive an ID card just to get into the Library of Congress. Then you need to go through all kinds of, it's a big hassle. And then when I was there was no one else in the whole room, and the guy actually yelled at me for using the computer. He said, there's a 20-minute limit on this. And I kind of looked around and I said, well, there's no one else to use it. Yeah, but it's like, well, okay, whatever. Many places, they search you, you have to get buzzed in, and it's a whole big deal. Here you just walk in, we're up on the 3rd floor, you just walk in, tell the person at the reference desk, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. It's really nice if you have specific things you're looking for. Probably one of the more annoying things is when people come in and say, well, I want to, what do you have about gambling? I want to look at everything you have about gambling. Well, we've got 20,000 books. And even if I brought all 20,000 out for you, unless you're Lieutenant Data from Star Trek, you couldn't possibly read 20,000 books. So it's really nice if you say, yeah, I'm looking at, I want to know about the Mint Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Okay, cool, boom, now we can help you. Oh yeah, we have this, we have that, we have that. So yeah, the more specific you can be, the better. And it's a pretty nice place to do research. A lot of nice restaurants around there for lunch. So it's nice to make kind of a little bit of a day out of it. Okay, other questions about the collections, about the center, about what we do? Okay.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Before anybody leaves, there are 3 more seminars tomorrow, this afternoon at 3 o'clock. It's in a different location. Wait, don't ask me what the location is. You all have your little things. I just want to tell a quick, short little thing, and then I'll dismiss the crowd. Chris and I went to the Liad Library 5 years ago, thereabouts, because we were just absolutely fascinated, as I'm sure you all are, about the history of gaming, et cetera, et cetera. David is an extraordinarily gracious host, and I was extraordinarily ignorant about what David had. And so we're looking around, sort of, and David says to me, he said, do you want to see Harvey's diaries? And I'm thinking, what are Harvey's diaries? And he said, well, it's a little three-ring binder. And I said, okay, sure, I'll take a look, or whatever it is. Harvey Fuller, when he was traveling around Nevada, made notes. And he made the notes in alphabetical order as he traveled around the country. And in the diary, he listed from the Carson City register of who owned what casinos, he listed the percentages that each of the owners got from each of the games inside each of the casinos. And if you go into these diaries, which David will let you do and take a peek at them, you go down to the horseshoe and you look at the horseshoe and it'll say the dead man, what's the evening shift, the overnight shift, the graveyard shift. It'll list so-and-so got 2% of Keno, so-and-so got 5% of Keno. And when you look at the names, it's the names that we all go, oh my God. Any case, thank you very much for coming. Go visit the library, go visit online. David is an excellent resource and an excellent friend of the club. Thank you very much for coming.